Welcome to Spirit of Madikwe, Africa's Majesty. We're going to take you on a journey to a real safari. All right, welcome everyone to Spirit of Madikwe, Africa's Majesty. Thank you very much for joining in. Yeah, what is Spirit of Madikwe? This is our first episode about it. We are going to tell you how this whole thing got to start. And if I say we, this is Arthur Harding and myself, Matthias Stegemann. Arthur will introduce himself later. I am pretty much a German tourist that loves to be in South Africa. And yeah, me and my wife, we have been touring through Africa since almost 10 years, and we've seen a lot of things. But during the recent trips, we discovered how we can experience Africa in a different way, and this is what it's all about in Spirit of Madikwe. We really got to experience and value the nature and the bush. And this is what we actually would like to also give to you, to give you an understanding of what it really means to experience Africa, to experience safari. And yeah, a big part of this was actually Arthur and the way he explained things to us. And maybe I can give this word now to him to introduce himself, and then let's move on how we actually got to know each other and how this whole thing got kicked off and rolling.
Right, good day, folks. My name's Arthur. I'm a ranger / tour guide in South Africa. For the last couple of years, I've been working in various parks in South Africa, from the Kruger National Park all the way through to Madikwe Game Reserve. And I just have a more educational approach towards tours. My philosophy is people come here to experience Africa, and if you do the simple cookie cutter, everybody chasing the big five thing, then everybody gets the same experience, but nobody really experiences Africa. So I prefer to have a more holistic and slow approach to viewing nature, and also to putting in a bit of effort. The reality is, if you watch a documentary channel, you're going to see a lot of great things on television. But what nobody tells you is that those guys are sitting there for days on end waiting for those cool things to happen. So patience is the key. That's my philosophy. So Matthias, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly what you just said. I mean, patience is the key. I just remember really pretty much the first time we met. I think it was probably a morning game drive. No, actually, I think we met already in the evening. We had some pretty cool discussions about the bush and nature and everything. And then the game drive was due to start, I think, 5:30 in the morning. So the usual time when you get up before the sun rises. And I think you actually gave us a call a little bit ahead of time, because you were saying, okay, Matthias, I heard the lions roar, so let's get out and find them. And
yeah, so before we get to actually going out, I just have to tell the story quickly of when you guys arrived at the lodge.
Yeah.
And I must say it was a very interesting moment for me, because in you guys pull with the car, and quite honestly, the first thing I noticed was all the luggage.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, these people are here for 4 nights, but they packed for a month.
Yeah, you have to have a couple of things with you.
At that point in time, and at that point in time, I had no idea that we're going to hit it off so nicely, you know. And then the other fond memory I have is that I think we missed that afternoon drive. We just went out for sundowners quickly, and when I was talking to you guys over sundowners, and the first thing I said to you guys was, forget about the big five.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget the way Zara looked at me, because she was. It's almost like she thought this guy must be done. Because that's probably the last thing that somebody wants to hear from a ranger. But as you guys saw at the end of the day, it worked out. I mean, the thing is just to spend your time and not be focused on one specific thing. But to get back to where you started the story, so what happened is, normally if we wake up the guests at 5 o'clock to get going at 5:30, then I'm normally awake at about 3:30. And this specific morning, I was sitting outside my room, enjoying a cup of coffee and waking up, and it was about 3:45, and that's when I heard the lions roar. And I realized they're close. And I rushed down to the lodge and I packed the coffee and got everything ready. And I thought, okay, and I stood there and I thought, these guys are going to be here just now. And then I looked at my watch and it was like 4:45, and it was like 4:45. Okay. And I thought, well, at this point in time, I don't care. If you're going to scream at me, you're going to scream at me, but I'm going to wake you up now. And I think I think when I said to you guys, the lions are roaring outside, I was really flabbergasted, because I think it was like 10 minutes and you guys were in the main lodge, had a cup of coffee, and we were on the vehicle already.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're there for, you know, right?
But then we had that spectacular experience where we were driving along the mountains, and I was looking for the lions, and then the two famous males, Edu and Matata, started roaring, and we had that sound echoing off the mountain.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best moments ever. Is, you know, we haven't seen the lions, and the lions were just at the base of the mountain, and we just couldn't get in there. The bush was too thick.
Yeah.
But they started roaring, and we had that sound echoing off the mountain. And I must be honest, that's one of my favorite sounds in Africa, is a lion roaring.
And I think the cool thing you just forgot to mention is we basically were just sitting there. So you basically switched off the vehicle. It was still before sunrise, so it was still very, very silent. You couldn't hear a lot of things, a few birds that kind of are like, is it already sunrise or not? So like a little bit of birds' voices, but that was pretty much it. So it was silent. And we were listening, our ears off, and then we heard that roar that Arthur just explained. So that was, breathtaking. I have to say that.
Yeah, it's a moment that never gets old. You can experience that 100 times and it still stays special. And but I know at some point I decided that, hey guys, we're not gonna waste our time if we can't get into the thicket. You know, sitting there the whole morning waiting for lions, I'm gonna leave. And I decided to go looking for rhinos, and we were heading west. And as Murphy's Law would have it, I just started heading west, and then my colleagues called in and they said, hey, the lions just came out of the bush.
Yeah.
And that's when we flew around and we went back, and we had that moment where we were sitting on the road and they were walking straight towards us, and they crossed in front of us. And now, something I have to share with the listeners is there's something very important about safaris, and that is that besides for taking your time, you gotta kind of realize when you've had the best of a sighting and move on. there comes a time when you have to say, okay, nothing's going to happen here. Let's move on and find something else. And that's pretty much where we got to. I mean, they crossed the road right in front of us. They went over to the watering hole, and everybody lost them, and that was it. And we left. We went looking for rhinos. And then the next moment, all hell broke loose. Because all of a sudden, we had the two Twalo brothers that popped out on the other side of the watering hole. And there was literally a lion gang fight going on the reserve. Now,
yeah, it was just fun to listen to this on the radio. It was almost like a soccer game. I mean, we left the sighting already. I wasn't sad about this because, I mean, as Arthur said, at some point in time, you have to make that call. And then you have to give others a chance to see it. But as you said, all hell broke loose. And we just listened to that chatter on the radio. That was...
Yeah, and the funny thing was, nobody was actually seeing the lions because the lions were in a spot that the vehicles couldn't get to. So you just had reports from everybody saying what they heard. And as that died down, when they finally realized that, there was like, the lions went quiet, and it's like everybody gave up and said, they're done with this. And the next moment, Matata popped out. Now, I have to explain quickly that with Edo and Matata, Edo was the older male, and he was bonded with Matata, which was a fairly young male. And basically what had happened is age and experience showing their mark there. He sold Matata out big time. Because the Twalo brothers were two massive lions from the Kalahari. And there was no way that Edo, with this youngster on at his side, could take them on. But he used his brain. He kind of encouraged Matata that he was roaring and going on and building up the courage in Matata, that Matata eventually decided to take on these two males. And when he took the two males on, Edo just disappeared.
Man,
and he was like, strategy. Okay, so they're busy beating him up, I'm out of here. And that's when it got really interesting for us, because then the chase started. Because the Twalos were chasing Matata, and Matata was going like a bat out of hell all the way down the northern fence line. Yeah. And at that point, I realized something that, there was this, yes, there were three lions chasing each other, but that's not exactly a very interesting sighting, because what you got is one lion running and about 500 meters after two lions walking in the same direction. So
yep.
I said to you guys, let's hang back and hear what happens with Edo.
Yeah.
And eventually I worked my way around the mountain to the northern fence line. And that's where we picked up Edo. And you've got some great shots of that moment.
Oh, yeah. That was awesome. He was just walking there like, okay, nothing's happened. I'm easy.
Yeah, he was like on a casual Sunday stroll. He was just strolling down. But the thing is, that's the thing. Lions are a lot like people. And he was showing his experience there. Basically, what he had done is his main concern as the oldest male in the pride is he wants to keep the pride land safe. So by setting up Matata and getting the other guys to chase Matata, he got what he wanted. The other two males were out of the Western Pride's territory. They were chasing Matata. So he did his job. It's kind of questionable. He did sacrifice his buddy to do it, but he did what he had to do. But I think then what happened is the realization hitting that Matata wasn't coming back. And now I'm talking about what happened over the next few days.
Yeah, this is where we basically then lost you. I think we had a lot of cool sightings then in the meantime. I think we also saw the two Swallow brothers then strolling along to Plowdown, having a nice drink, and
yeah, that's where we had the brothers drinking,
yes,
and then we also had we also put in our due diligence, which unfortunately failed. We saw a lot of other cool things, but I remember that first trip we did a lot of camping at the mountains to find the leopard.
Yes. So basically, you made sure we have to come back already.
We found a whole lot of other things, but we never could find the leopard.
No, we didn't.
And unfortunately, that's one thing, and that's one of the reasons why I say to people, you need to approach nature openly, because if you're going to pin your hopes on the big five, I was reading statistics the other day, only 7% of tourists go home having seen a leopard if they come to Africa on one visit.
Okay.
So, if you're going to pin everything on the big five, you are setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
And as you know, we've always followed the same approach, taking our time, enjoying the sightings that you have, and we eventually did find the leopard.
We did. I mean, I think it was the third visit, right?
Yeah, I think it was the third one, but things got so interesting with the lions that every time you guys came out, we spent a whole lot of time with the lion.
Oh, it was. I mean, and I think that's the story now that we might want to continue sharing, because that is really, I mean, that is so, I keep saying it's a soap opera, because that is just funny.
It is like a soap opera, but it's important for people to hear this, because it also helps understanding that Africa is not what people have in their minds, this wide expanse where nature just does what she wants.
Mm.
Most of Africa is game reserves, and the rest is cultivated land and rural villages and things like that. So in these pockets of wildlife, we as humans have to step in and help nature. Otherwise, there's things that would naturally happen that can't happen because we placed fences around everything.
That's true.
So we have to go in and help with that management. And that's where the story of these lions starts getting interesting, because subsequent to your visit, what happened was Matata kind of gave up and he said, I'm not going back there. Those two lions are too big. They're going to beat me up. And Addo knew that all the prides in the game reserve were run by coalitions of two.
Mm-hmm. So
if he stayed on his own, he was in trouble. So he eventually left the pride and he joined up with Matata, and they went somewhere to the east of the reserve. And for a long time, we didn't actually see them. They were skulking around the mountains, just living a nomadic lifestyle. But this fight also, I believe it's this moment that we witnessed with that big chase that had this impact on the Swallows. Because the Swallows got very, very bold from there on. They thought they were unbeatable. And even for a lion, that's a big mistake to make. So about 2 weeks later, the Addos made, or the Swallows made the mistake of splitting up. And one brother came to the west and the other brother went east. And they did that 2 or 3 times and it all went well. And every time they met up again, it was as if they were splitting up, trying to cover more territory, looking for females.
Okay.
But one of the Swallow brothers then bumped into another pride in the east. And this time he wasn't that lucky, so he was killed.
Yeah.
And that was quite kind of a shock for us, because the whole time we were sitting in the west. Now, just to give you a bit of the pride dynamic so that people can understand, we've got 4 females in the west. And one of the females had cubs. So we've got the 2 cubs and the 4 females, but now they have no male and there's nobody in charge of the pride. So we had a lot of concerns at that point in time, because we were waiting for the Swallows to now come and claim the territory that they've taken from Addo and Matata. And I think they never picked up the scent of the females. So they thought Addo and Matata were nomads, so they just left the area again.
Oh.
And all of a sudden we had this problem, because the reason why the Swallows are called the Swallows is they come from Swallow Kalahari, game reserve in the Kalahari. And why they were brought in is in an enclosed space with an X amount of lions. Every so often you have to bring in lions from outside, because you need to keep your genetic pool. You can't have 10 lions and let them mate forever, because you're going to end up getting inbreeding. So the problem is, now we've got this one male, and he, at that point in time, he became the most important lion in the reserve, because he was carrying the new genes. And we desperately needed Swallow to mate.
So what did you do?
So it was kind of an involved process. So we identified 2 other lions, and it made quite an interesting trio of lions, because the 2 lions we identified was, first of all, was Madimu. Now Madimu, guys, he was so old at that point, I think he had 1 tooth in the mouth. And then we identified Tsamega, which was just kicked out of one of the other prides. So he was only about 2 years, 9 months old. And we decided that, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and Rob Taylor. Rob Taylor is the lion manager on Madikwe. He does all the ecology with the lions. So we contacted a gentleman by the name of Gus van Dijk. Now, Gus is very well experienced with lions. And at the end of the day, him and Rob came to the decision that what we're going to do is we're going to create a new coalition for the females in the West. And this is where it really started getting interesting, because lion coalitions typically are lions that grow up together, or lions that meet each other in the wild and they make the choice to be friends. In this case, we were trying to do this in a different way. And what we came up with was, the only way we're going to do this is we had to take one hell of a chance, because remember, a bonding of 3 lions has never actually been attempted before.
Okay.
So this was something.
I think what you were saying before is really this Addo and Matata, both of them, you also kind of bonded in this Boma thing, right?
Yeah, they met up and they were hanging around together, but they weren't forming a pair. So they were placed into the Boma just to solidify that bond.
Oh, okay, got it.
But in this case, we were taking 3 lions that were walking around on their own.
Oh.
And we decided, okay, you guys have to be friends.
Now that looks good.
Yeah, so that's when the whole roller coaster ride started, because we had to go in, and what we did is we caught Swallow, Mudimu, and Tsamega, and this is where things started getting interesting, and where they got their nickname. I don't know if you remember, we called them the Mafia.
The Mafia, yeah.
Because you had this old man Madimu. He was clearly the brains of the operation, because he contributed nothing else. And the reason why he was in the coalition is because he's been on the reserve the longest.
Yeah.
So he would know where they can go and where they can't go, where they're going to run into other males, and where they need to stay clear of the other male.
Yeah.
Because he's been surviving on his own for a long time, so he knows the reserve. Tsamega was going to be the bodyguard. Because at this stage, Tsamega was about 2 years, 9 months. Swallow was 3 years, 9 months. And Tsamega was about 15 kilograms heavier than Swallow.
Wow.
So he is just one massive lion. We got them into the Boma, and they were in there for 8 weeks. And in the beginning, there was a bit of scratches and a bit of fighting, but this is the thing. What I just want people to realize is we were not taking chances that lions would be killed because there's no recorded incident of lions killing each other in a boma.
Okay.
In
that
the
because
boma,
of this is kind of a neutral place, or?
Yeah, it's kind of they're under stress, so they forget their own differences.
Okay.
And they all, in the beginning, they're like, "What is this place? I want to get out, and I'm fenced in." So it's like caging a wild animal. But if you leave them in there long enough, they kind of make peace with the fact where they are, and then the social structure starts coming back. And we started off to give you guys an idea, we had to take special care of Madimu because the other two were just too strong.
Oh, okay.
So what we had to do was, if we fed them, because remember, now they're in the boma, they can't hunt for themselves. So we have to supply them with food. So we would give them a sub-adult male zebra that we would go and harvest and then bring to the boma. But then at the same time, we would also put in an impala. Because the idea was the two big lions will go and fight over the zebra and they'll eat there. And then while they're busy with the impala carcass is there for Madimu.
Okay.
And it worked like a charm. Every time we dropped, Madimu would take his impala, drag it under a tree, and he would just like, I don't care about you guys, I'm having my lunch right here. And eventually it got to the point where, man, it looked good. It really looked good. We had all three of them lying together. They were walking together. They were eventually feeding off the same carcass without fighting with each other.
I think that was when we were there the second time, right?
Yes, because
Like
I still took you guys to the boma and we watched them feeding.
Yeah, I remember.
And at that point, things were looking great. But now, here's the thing, folks: when you watch these documentaries and these programs, always remember we as humans don't know everything. So the process in Africa, and a story we'll get to later, is the Pilanesberg elephants and the Slushlui elephants. When it comes to conservation, a lot of mistakes are made. But it's by making mistakes that we learn. So there was, in this particular situation, there was something we didn't think about. And that became a big problem once we released them. Because at the same time that we released them from the boma, we also had another pride in the southeast that had just kicked out two brothers, which were called the Bonjanala. And I think that was on your next visit when that problem started cropping up.
Yeah. I think that was then the third visit. So we basically were busy following these three that basically now founded this coalition.
Exactly. You were following this like a TV series. You were here for the episode. And
that was like crazy, yeah.
But I'll get to that moment just now. So the three lions did exactly what we wanted them to do. They moved into the west and they met up with the females. Tamega started mating with the females. Swallow started mating with the females. And Madimu was getting food, and everybody was just one big happy family. But all of a sudden, we had these two Bonjanala males who now didn't have a pride. And they were walking around as nomadic males looking for a place to take over a pride. And in the beginning, I remember I said to you, I was calling them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Because for some unknown reason, they chose the only pride in the reserve where there's three big males. And they wanted to take over that pride.
Yeah. Not always a smart idea.
Let's not forget, releasing this pride also created a problem for Jabashesha, the female with the cubs.
Yeah.
Because she had to leave the pride.
Yes.
Because with the new males coming into the pride, those babies were in danger, in serious danger.
Yeah.
Because they'll kill them. So
Yeah, that's one of the
we
things that
had we
nature
had
does. So.
we had some good sightings of her with the cubs, and she was, man, that lion is a fantastic mother.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that she's probably one of the best lion mothers I've seen in my whole career.
No, real kudos to her. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because yes, she was looking after those cubbies really good. I remember that night we saw them on the mountain. When we did the night drive, and she was keeping them up on the mountains at night, and then bring them down during the day to feed. And
Yeah,
she was hunting on her own. No, she did really well. But the problem that came in is the first morning that the Bonjanalas came into the area, we were there. We saw that whole thing happen.
Yeah, that was that day of the big roar. So.
Yeah, that was magical. I think you still have that video.
Oh yes, I do.
Where we just had lions roaring everywhere. I mean, we had 5 lions going nuts.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget my excitement. I think it's on the video when I said to you, "Hey, it's the boys, it's the boys." And we turned around because it was so strange. We were at the big shepherd's tree, and we were looking at rhino earlier the morning. And then I went for a drive and I said, "Hey guys, that shepherd's tree had some nice shade. Let's go back there for coffee."
Yeah.
And when we went back to the shepherd's tree, all of a sudden these lions popped up. And then the 2 Bonjanalas came in from the eastern side. And there was this big thing, Tamega in front, Swallow behind him, Modimo walking at the back, taking his time.
Yeah, you two just go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Modimo, I must be honest, personality-wise, I love that lion.
Yeah.
The thing is, he was just, I mean, he's the only lion that I've ever seen. And there's a video on my Facebook page where you can see him. He lies flat on his back while he's roaring. He doesn't even get up to roar. He's like, "Okay, I'll roar with you guys, but I'm not moving." He was just such a cool lion. And so
Tamega also, like, very funny. He didn't really understand what's going on, but he was just, "Okay, I'm with you guys."
Yeah, no, and Swallow was in front. Swallow wanted to tear those boys anew.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 2 Bonjanalas bailed out of the area, and then when you guys left, they kept on coming back.
Okay.
And they were really set on taking that territory. And the problem is they are, although distantly, they are related to some of the females in the pride. So we can't let them take over that pride. It would be ethically wrong to just sit back and watch it happen. So the problem that came out of this coalition that we didn't foresee is Mudimu didn't want to fight anymore. He's too old.
Yeah.
And for him, it was just easier if the Bonjanalas walk into the area to just turn around and walk away. And then we had the shift in personality where Swallow, because he was now partnered up with Mudimu, he would actually go and say, "Man, I'm going to stick with my buddy." And then he walks away, and then they leave Tamega alone. And Tamega would go and take on the other 2 boys because he's big enough. But then when he gets back to the other 2, then he gets aggressive with Mudimu because he's upset. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you have my back?"
Yeah. Well.
So it created this whole instability. Now, something that people don't often realize with lions is, especially for the females in the pride, if there's that kind of instability, females will not go into estrus.
Yeah.
So there was no hopes of breeding, and the future of the pride was at stake. So a decision was made to remove the Bonjanalas. Because we really thought that if we get the Bonjanalas away, then the 3 of them will get on again. And so the Bonjanalas was moved to another area, and it didn't help because that that fracture in friendship between Mudimu and Tsamega, they were just constantly at each other.
Yeah, that
And
caused this. Yeah.
yeah, and then unfortunately, guys, now I said to you guys, Mudimu is a very old lion. So we had to go in and get the three of them back into the boma.
Mm.
And it was during this move that we found that Mudimu was actually one of the reasons why he didn't have any interest or anything is he was actually severely malnourished.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's very difficult to look at a lion and see what condition he's in. It's only once you got him on the ground and you can get in there and touch him and feel his ribs and weigh him that you can see what condition they're in, especially with that mane. And when we did it was a very sad day for us, but we unfortunately had to let Mudimu go because he was at the point where he was old and he was now starting to suffer.
Yeah, that's
so one of the things we always keep in mind is, you know, yes, you want to let nature take its course, and in most cases we do, but in this particular case, do we really want to sit and watch that lion die slowly of starvation because you can't eat properly?
And on top of that, I think you would also risk then breaking the coalition between Swallow and Tsamega, because those two lions actually were very important also for the pride, right?
So, but I mean, initially the plan was to just move Mudimu somewhere else.
Ah, okay.
But the point is, once we got him down, it was clear that he was in a condition where he couldn't even eat properly. So unfortunately, we had to euthanize him.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, he was one of my favorite lions. So that was a very hard day for me. I remember I still phoned you to tell you.
Yeah, we had that talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, you know, it's one of those things. It's like losing, for me, it was like losing a friend because I've been following these lions so long.
Yeah, it was sad for us too. So I mean, also when we talked about this, it's sometimes
I mean,
you
I
just
literally cried a tear when we had to put Mudimu down. I'm not afraid to admit that.
Yeah, that's true.
But so what we ended up with was Swallow and Tsamega back in the boma, and they were only in there for 2 weeks, and then they started head rubbing and roaring together. And we took the chance and opened them up, and you guys saw them on the last visit with all the females.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a success story in the long run, because now the Chabashesha with the cubs has also come back to the pride, because the cubs are now old enough that the males won't kill them.
No, that's a good thing. We saw them running one night and just in front of the lodge. So just the two cubs. I don't know where Chabashesha was at that time, probably somewhere in the bush. But it was really nice. So we were sitting there for dinner, looking at the waterhole, waiting for the 9 o'clock elephant that would always pop up at 9 o'clock. That was really funny. And then we saw the two cubs. I mean, cubs, you can't say cubs anymore because we didn't even the staff at the lodge thought first it were the female lions.
Yeah,
only then we realized, okay, it's the two cubs.
Yeah, and you know, the reason why you probably saw them alone is because they're now at that age where they start exploring.
Yeah.
The funny thing for me about those two cubs is, ever since they were born, it's been very clear that the female is the adventurous one.
Yeah.
The male is a bit of a mama's boy.
No, I still remember that one time when we bumped into them. It was still when the males were in the boma, and we were driving there this morning. And then basically all the females came together with the cubs and the sub-adult male, and they were basically, you could really see, okay, this car is kind of not too close, but not really too far away. So you could see they kind of get adjusted to it. And then when they passed the car, then they just looked at us and gave us this grim, so like,
Yeah, and it was the female that growled at us. The male just like put his head down and don't hurt me, don't hurt me, don't hurt me, and walk on. And the female was like, you want a piece of me, huh? so she's quite interesting. But just to fill in the story, we have to go back a little bit and explain the story about the cubs, because we've pretty much gone through the whole saga, the whole lion saga.
Yeah.
But the thing with the cubs, at some stage, I think it was after your second visit, Chabashesha just disappeared, and we couldn't find her, and it was like a good 2 months that we never saw Chabashesha or the cubs. And then we started seeing Chabashesha, but we never saw the cubs, and we thought, man, it's over. She's lost the cubs. That was the general consensus. I think I actually let you know as well that the cubs.
You wrote a text to me that at least one or maybe even two cubs were lost, and we were already totally sad again.
Yeah, and then just after we took the males back into the pride, and the pride stabilized. One night I'm driving along the western fence line, and there's a lion lying in the road, and man, this is fantastic. And I see so just to fill people in, how we identify the lions is our lions are marked with almost like a brand. So a C on the front leg, that was Chabashesha. And I saw her and I was like, man, it's good to see that she's coming back to the pride. So hopefully she'll mate now and have more cubs. And I was still explaining to my guests that this was an interesting moment, because here I am sitting on the vehicle telling the guests this whole story about how she did so well looking after the cubs so long, but unfortunately she lost the cubs. And being like animals will always show up at the worst possible time. The next moment she gives a little contact call, and I see a bush rustle, and out pops the two cubs. And they're about twice the size that they were that I saw them the last time. And, there was no mistaking it. It's the same two cubs.
I would have loved to see your face at that time.
At that point in time, I was so excited. I did something that you would probably not believe.
Okay.
Other than, I've always asked you, if you take a nice photo, please send it to me, because I don't take my cell phone out on drive. Unless it's a major emergency, my phone is always on silent in my pocket.
Yeah.
And that night, I actually said to the guest, hold on. And I took out my phone, and right there where I was sitting, I made a phone call to Rob.
Oh, okay.
To say to him, listen here, but I just found the cubs. The cubs are fine. That's how big that moment was. And for the guests on the vehicle, that was really spectacular, because it was funny, because I had about 4 girls on the car, and I could see the tears starting to come when they were thinking about these cubs that have died and whatnot. And the next moment, out pops these cubs, and it was just a fantastic night. It's very similar to what happened in the Karoo National Park a couple of years ago, so in that case, in the Karoo National Park, they introduced lions, but once again, learning from mistakes, they did it completely wrong. And the male of the pride, Sylvester, kept on breaking out of the park.
Oh, okay.
So eventually the decision was made to remove all the lions. But at that stage, one of the females already had 2 cubs, and the cubs were about 2 months old. At the point where they're starting to eat meat, if there's meat available. And, they still drink from their mother, but they will have a nibble.
Okay.
And it got to the point where the guys went in with helicopters and all of this to capture this pride, and the 2 cubs got away.
Ooh.
And people looked for them for about 2 or 3 weeks, and nobody could find the cubs. And eventually they just decided that, well, by now, without mother's milk, they must have been dehydrated and died already. Because, as you know, the Karoo is semi-desert, so it's hot. Yeah, and then 6 months later, some tourists are driving through the park, and they come back to the gate, and they show the gate guard a photo, and they said, well, I thought you said you didn't have lions. Well, we just saw 2 lions. And it was the cubs.
Wow.
and they survived on their own. So it was
It's amazing. Yeah?
yeah, we still don't know how. Nobody followed them, or we don't know what they did to survive. And the best explanation, or the closest to a good explanation that we can get, is the Lion King explanation. They were eating bugs
Probably, yeah.
because that's about the only thing that they can catch is dung beetles and maybe small lizards.
Wow. I mean, I'm always surprised about how nature can really take its way. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
there's so many great stories. There's in the time that I've been in the bush, we've had some great things happen, but we've also had some interesting moments with very sad things happening, especially on the lion front. And this, you guys are more than welcome to go and look up, or let us know in the comments, and we can do an episode about it.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
there was a female lion in the Kalahari that her cubs died, and she got to the point where, for about 5 seasons running, what she would do is go catch a gemsbok baby, so and a baby antelope,
Okay.
and she literally tried to raise a baby antelope as her own. And she did it for 5 years running. Now, obviously, it would never work because that baby would never drink from her,
Yeah.
and she doesn't know how to raise that baby, so she wouldn't take it to water regularly, and she would treat it like a lion cub, and eventually the little gemsbok would die.
That's the videos that you sometimes see also on YouTube, or the pictures where this lion basically is kind
She's
of,
with the baby gemsbok, and she's
yeah,
like licking.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that was a documented case. For about 5 seasons running, she tried. So there is so much about these animals that we don't know, and that's why I say it's important that when we take people on safari, we talk about these things, about managing a reserve, because people need to understand how little we actually still know about our nature.
Yeah.
And it's not just Africa; it's all across the world.
No, I think actually, Arthur, absolutely great. I think this is exactly the idea, and this is now the first glimpse on how we get up to this spirit of Madikwe, really to understand nature, to really get involved into this. And I guess you guys have now got a little bit of an understanding of how it all started. And yeah, as Arthur said, let us know in the comments, or yeah, give us a hint what else you're interested in, how you want to get this going. This is our pilot episode. Right,
It's unfortunate that, but it's like with most things in the world, things are not what they used to be anymore, and we need to change that. We need to bring the love for nature back.
Absolutely.
We need to get safari goers to understand again that there are many reserves with the big five, and there are many guests that see the big five, but seeing a honey badger is something special.
Oh yes, especially when he tries
You know,
to
and
start a
we
line.
need to
So
get get that education out there, because at the moment, I think my biggest downside to the safari industry is we're trying to engage people, but we're engaging people with what they already know, and it should be a new experience, if you understand what I'm saying.
yeah, and I guess that is exactly where I'm coming from. Also, I mean, we have been seeing so many animals, and we've been on safaris in Kenya, in Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and all these countries. And you basically, I mean, it doesn't matter if you see an elephant in Kenya or in South Africa, if you just want to see an elephant. But if you really understand the whole ecosystem behind that, the stories behind that, what is the implications here? If you see an elephant in Kenya, it's a completely different experience than seeing an elephant in Botswana or in the Kruger Park.
Yeah, or
So,
seeing a Pilanesberg elephant is completely different from seeing a Kruger elephant.
oh yeah, that story we have to tell the guys anyway. Why are the
Yeah,
Pilanesberg elephants so crazy, whereas
Slightly
in
touched
Edo
in the
it's
head.
totally,
Why are they slightly aggressive?
yes.
Um,
That is a story that I really love to hear.
yeah, so we'll do that story, and then I'm looking forward to, over the next couple of episodes, introducing people to places that we would love to show them, that it is not normally very popular. You know, the so-called hidden gems. That I'm really looking forward to that, because that's some of the best attractions in South Africa, and unfortunately the South Africans are keeping them to themselves.
Well, that is why it's called Hidden Gems, but thankfully there's a few guys that want to unveil them. Yeah?
No, that's it. So we'll unveil them, because I think it's something the whole world needs to enjoy.
No, that is so true. That is so true. All right, you guys, I'll leave you to it now. I'm looking forward for the next episode of Spirit of Madikwe, and yeah, thank you very much, and talk to you again soon.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.